Welcome to episode 175 of the Necronoma.com, and happy Halloween.
You know that feeling when you're searching for a new horror book, but you're just being stared down by a wall of Stephen King? We're trying to change that. We're Butcher Cabin Books, a new horror-focused bookstore giving shelf space to indie horror writers. Don't worry, we still carry King, but he's quarantined to his own section. Learn more at horrorbookstore.com, where you can buy books online along with merch and mystery boxes. Or you can visit us in person in Louisville, Kentucky, where we're open year-round.
If you're looking to start your own podcast, you should check out Libsyn.com and get up to 2 months of free podcasting service when you use our code NECRO, all caps, NECRO. Libsyn provides you with great customer service and support. They have real-time podcast analytics, free podcast guides and tutorials, and everything else you'll need to get started podcasting today. Go to libsyn.com and enter the promo code NECRO today, and check out the Necronoma.com wherever you listen to podcasts. I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now, and I have no idea what I desire, so the cenobites are never coming for me.
And I'm Don Guillory, author, historian, educator, co-host of the podcast, and I'm going to tell you right now, they're definitely not coming for me, because as soon as I saw the Bucks, I would say, I'm not fucking with that and leave it behind.
You know, I spent a huge part of the pandemic learning to solve, well, not a huge part, I guess a couple months, learning to solve Rubik's Cubes. So I would probably get totally suckered in and die. So there you go. Anyway, joining us this week, Hailey Piper is back to celebrate Halloween with us. Welcome, Hailey.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Of course.
Thank you for doing this. We were like, oh, it's Hellraiser. There's only one person that can do that. So here you are. I guess we should let you tell our listeners a bit about yourself first, though.
Oh, sure. Hi, I'm Hailey Piper. I am the author of Queen of Teeth, No Gods for Drowning, The Worm and His Kings, and some other stuff. I write horror and dark fiction and queer, weird stories all over the place. That's it.
Wait a second. Whoa. Hold on.
Oh, no.
Stoker Award-winning author.
Okay. Sometimes when I go fast, right, I'm the Bram Stoker Award-winning author of Queen of Teeth and the other stuff I said.
Do you have anything new you want to push that's coming out soon?
And it's sort of fitting for this movie. If you're into people doing blood sacrifices of each other to get divine attention, my new book out is No Gods for Drowning, which is about a world where people are used to depending on the gods and they've ditched them essentially. And gods usually protect people from the sea monsters. And now that's an issue. So someone is killing people in very elaborate and gory ways to try to bring a blood god back so that she can protect everyone. So she's got a good reason, but still, killing people. There's also the woman she loves who is trying to defend the city, and there are two detective friends of theirs who are hunting down the killer, not knowing it's someone that they care about.
Awesome. I have not gotten to it yet, but I hope to soon. So
it's my biggest book. So I'm like, there are people who's like, I'm sorry, I haven't read it yet. It's like, it's 400 pages. Usually when a new Hailey Piper book comes out, people are like, okay, that'll be 130 pages. I can knock that out in 2 sittings. And it's like 400 pages lands on your lap. And it's just like, oh, it's a book.
I'll be honest, that's totally been messing with me. Like novellas have become my happy place because I can just dive in and it holds the tension and I'm great. And then it's done and I can feel like I accomplished something when,
yeah.
I
feel you. I love novellas too.
But yeah, like when a new King book drops, I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that. So
I was big as the new one, 800.
Something like
pages,
that, yeah.
Something like that. I mean, my book's coming out next year. The biggest one is still like only slightly more than half the length of this one. They're like 2 short novels and a novella. So like they're those quick fire ones you can just kind of pop through. Not that they take any less time to write, but
Oh yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's jump into the film. So I know you did our previous Hellraiser episode. So I know that movie is kind of sacred to you, or up there,
it's
however you want to say it.
Yeah.
How does it compare for you as a huge fan of the first one? And like, why are you glad we're talking about this today?
Well, I think it's a very different animal from the first movie. They both kind of draw off of different facets of the book, which is fine because the original movie is plot wise, it's incredibly follows the book like bit by bit. Like the main thing it changes because last time we talked, I hadn't read the book. So now I have a kind of a different perspective on the original movie and a different perspective of this one, but an appreciation for both because this one it zooms out a bit. Like it changes some things about the lore to give it a grander scale. So like if the original movie is kind of about one person's experience with, or a couple people's experience, or the ramifications of one person's dabbling in this stuff. This is more you're going from talking to one disciple to talking to studying the religion.
Right.
Now Hellraiser 2 does that as well, and I would almost say this compares more with that movie. Which I hadn't watched in like 20 years last time we were talking about Hellraiser, but I have watched it since, like I've gotten caught up on my stuff since we talked about the original movie. So like, that introduces stuff like the Leviathan, like the grander kind of labyrinth of where the Cenobites move into our world from. And then this expands even further on that. And you couldn't really link them like in a single continuity necessarily because the lament configuration operates differently in this movie than it did previously. It has new rules, it has new shapes. But I appreciate that because like this really Hellraiser fans have been starving since Hellraiser 2. I feel like we've gotten movies, but they're messy and like, I mean, I haven't read the comics. I've heard some of them are good, some of them aren't. But the thing is, it's been very simplistic. Like there's just been the main problem. Just to kind of recap on some stuff from last time we talked, the part of my problem with the sequels previously was that they kind of adhered to a Christian vision of the spiritual. And like I appreciate the original movie and book. There were explorers of experience. And now we're back to that and then expanding upon it in that direction. There's no ambiguity here where it's like, you could say this is, it's still the Christian hell or whatever. It's like, no, God is this instead of that. Just to warn you, my notes are all over the place because I just have so much to say about this. But anyway, so hopefully that gives an idea.
Get them all in.
I hope that gives a sense of why I'm, excited to talk about this movie.
Definitely. Absolutely. So one more question before we fully jump in. How would you respond to someone who tells you this movie is not horny enough? Because this is the comment I keep seeing.
I mean, that's kind of going to be in the same range as how the Cenobites see things. It's going to be a spectrum. So I mean, it really is going to depend on who you are. I mean, if you ask like, could it be hornier? Of course it could be. But I think you would have had to make it in a different current climate than we are in right now.
Yeah.
Because to get the kind of budget it had for what it accomplishes here. I mean, I think like people look back to the original movie and they're like, that movie was very horny. It's like, yes, they also only gave Clive Barker $1 million to make it. The fact that it is as good as it is and has the production value it does is incredible based on that.
Absolutely. And for me personally, I'm not a huge Hellraiser fan, so I don't have that nostalgia or anything for the original. I liked it just fine, but I actually preferred this version. This is my favorite Hellraiser I've seen, and I'm very obsessed with addiction as it is. So this movie just totally spoke to me. So I was fine without it being horny. I just had to ask because I literally see this comment all the time and it cracks me up. But anyway, Don, what about you? Where does this rank for you for Hellraisers? And
I thought you meant for horniness. I was going to say I give it a.
Oh yeah, sure, we can get there too, I suppose.
Give it a 6.5 out of 10. You ruin it when you tell somebody that you love them in the middle of it. Anyway, because
then this is our last episode. Yeah.
Then it becomes something else. Emotions are drawn because there are different types. Anyway. This one, you basically said what I was going to say about this version, where, again, I was never a big Hellraiser fan. Hellraiser was one of those movies when the 80s were out, when I was in the 80s, I was already sucked into Freddy and Jason. Like, I did not care for Leatherface. I watched the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies, didn't really care for him. Or I should say it was Chucky, Jason and Freddy. So those were my holy trinity. But Hellraiser was out during that same period of me really being into horror movies, and I could never get into it. Same thing with like The Omen and a few Phantasm and stuff like that. I could never really get into them. But this movie, on the other hand, I didn't realize that I did this, but I sat at my desk in my office and watched it straight through. Did not get up once. Did not, go to the restroom. I mean, there was never this call of like, oh man, you need to pause it and take a break. I watched straight through because it kept me captivated, as opposed to some reboots that just, they aim and they miss badly. Like, this is going to be what the movie's about, or we're going to set you up to think that this is what the movie's about, to get your attention, and then we're going to completely fumble what this is. I'm not going to pick on any particular movies, but I know recently there have been discussions about certain movies setting people up and getting a completely different product. But no,
Happy Halloween, everybody.
Shut up. Don't tell everybody. Again, I'm not saying the movie was bad or good. It just sent me on a different voyage than I was prepared for. But no, this movie is something I could easily see recommending to someone who had never been into the Hellraiser franchise, and those who love it, despite the mixed reviews, because I think that was the same thing, as they were looking for that sexual aspect, or they were looking for something to be nostalgic about, to have this connection to the original. But then you might also have a bunch of incels that don't like the fact that Hellraiser isn't presented as a male, and which I did see some people pissing and moaning about that, which, why? What is your big hang up about that?
I love that you call her Hellraiser.
I know. I was going to comment, and I was like,
I'm sorry.
No, it's funny. I
was going to comment, and I was like, I'm going to let Hailey have this one.
I got so caught up in it.
It's fine, because they changed it back to the book. It's the Hell Priest now instead of Pinhead.
Like, the fact that they went back to the priest, is this a way to go, well, it's not Pinhead, it's blah blah blah, or is it like they just went back to the original, or like, how do you feel?
I think it's a combination, because Clive Barker never liked that nickname.
All right.
Because it's not, I think it's the combination of that. I think it's also that it's the Hell Priest in the book, and probably just also differentiate. I think it serves multiple purposes. It also kind of helps differentiate in the sense that they're not, like, we're not changing Pinhead. We're just not doing Pinhead.
Right.
You can still have Pinhead. Douglas Bradley can still be Pinhead, except for that one movie that the script was so bad he refused to do it. And that's saying something, considering. Well, I think the mixed reviews, and I don't want to speculate too much because I don't have that perspective. I can only look at it in the way that, like, maybe at first I might have been like, okay, this is a little different than what I was expecting. But I did try to go into it, not expecting much of anything. But I think some people weren't seeing, how do I put this? I think some people weren't seeing the sexual aspect, but they also weren't seeing what they kind of expected from David Bruckner after the Night House and the ritual, because in both of those cases, they're very zoomed in. You are sticking to one character. You are sticking to that character's circumstances. Everything else that's going on branches out from that character. Here, you have a character who's been caught in something much bigger than she was aware of at first. And even though she does become part of it, we're more aware of that than she is. We don't discover that with her. And I think that on some level, I guess I don't have a better way of putting this. It's not as depressingly confined as those two movies are. And I think some people might have been a little bit disappointed about that. Although I saw an article that I thought was really interesting where it said, if you watch those three movies kind of as a film night or whatever, they complement each other that way. Like the Hellraiser 2022 feels like a natural progression from the ritual to the Night House to itself.
Oh, interesting. I've only seen the Night House, but yeah, I'd have to rewatch it with that in mind. That sounds cool, though.
Yeah. I mean, each one is dealing with something bigger than the character. It's just this just approaches it a little differently.
We talked a little before we came on about Jamie Clayton as the Hell Priest and just the Cenobites in general. Would you care to comment on your thoughts on them?
So all the actors portraying Cenobites are so having to act through prosthetics and through this elaborate wardrobe, and which I saw the behind the scenes stuff, and all of it is just amazing.
And before we fully get rolling on the plot, do you have any comments on the representation of having a trans actress in a Clive Barker story?
I mean, it's just not like the movie made a thing about it,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Which is what I appreciate with stuff, because I think that's one of those things where you get like the studios start to get things backwards. But like, if we cast a trans person, it has to be about trans stuff, and they do that with everybody from marginalized stuff. They start to have that worry. It's like, but there's just us existing does not create an elephant in the room. There was what was that movie? Promising Young Woman.
Yes,
I think, and Laverne Cox was in that, and she was just in it. Like, it wasn't like they made a thing about her being trans or that her character had to be trans or whatever. She's just playing a part in a movie. But she did an amazing job as the Hell Priest.
Oh, yeah.
I was engrossed in every scene they gave her. Such incredible dialogue. Like, I was just floored every time she had a line, because I was just like, good God. Like, this is just delicious dialogue. It feels like it's coming from the disciple of this unknowable entity. And it was cool to see her. I was waiting for the other shoe to drop, because I was just like, it's not necessary. This movie isn't about that. And it didn't. It never did. So I'm just like, I mean, I'm not saying that they shouldn't have movies that are about that stuff, but I'm just saying, like, trans actors can just be in a movie.
Right.
Absolutely. And her delivery was amazing as well. Like, I mean, the dialogue is definitely great, but she was 100% the right choice.
Yes.
Like you said, just absolutely engrossing. I felt that way with all the Cenobites. I loved, I don't know their names. I'm sorry, other than Cheddar, just because.
Well, you got the Weeper, Gasp, Asphyx, and
the Mother.
The Mother. And I think there was one, the Mask.
Yeah. The Mask is the one that came for Colin near the end before the Gasp caught up with him.
Yeah, the Gasp was the one I liked. Yeah, that was cool. But yeah, I saw people like complaining that they were too clean or whatever, and I was like, man, I totally dug these, but okay.
Well, too clean as in what?
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, they're supposed to be beautifully grotesque or grotesquely beautiful. They're supposed to have a sense of decadence about the malformations of their flesh.
Right.
I love that.
Like, I think some people got attached to the like Hellraiser 3 Cenobites, where like the guy's got a camera in his head and the one like has like a CD reader coming out and such. Like, and like, yeah, it looks gross, but it's not really capturing that sense of the divine, which I think things just kind of got away from, and some viewers are going to have a very particular perspective on this stuff that's completely different from mine, that I am just like, they are supposed to be in this film at least within measure of something, I'm losing my words here, like divine or unknowable or sacred, something that is beyond people. Mm-hmm. You could argue that the original movie is not so much that, but I would say that the Cenobites aren't like grotesque either. I think that some people overlaying what happens to Frank onto the Cenobites, what they do to Frank.
Right.
But now let's go to this film that we're supposed to be talking about and kind of talking about and dancing around. But like, what do you want to hit? What's the big stuff, Hailey? You're the guest, so.
Oh, the big stuff. I mean, should we start with the plot or just?
We can go anywhere
wherever you want to take
You're
it.
The guest.
I mean, I think it's hard because now I've watched it twice and my perspective on the beginning has changed. Like I tweeted out this morning. It's like, it's actually, I think it's better on the second viewing, because a lot of the stuff, it's in the beginning, it feels the first time viewing, it feels like a sequence of events, which is normal. It's, a linear story, but on rewatching it, it feels more like a lot of pieces coming together, kind of like the puzzle box itself. It's interesting that you can kind of see the grander scheme of what's going on. And like, because the first time I watched it, I thought it was curious why, because the beginning of the movie, Roland Voight gets the puzzle box, and by the time we see it, it's in a different shape than we're used to. He lures in his lawyer Serena sends in a guy to go be killed by it. And on first viewing, I was like, it's interesting that they're choosing not to show exactly what's happening to this guy. He's kind of, you see him fuzzy in the background where everything's focused on Voight with the box that is now changing again into a new shape. And I just kind of thought, okay, they just don't want to show the Cenobites yet. It's just the beginning of the movie. That makes sense. Although they did do that in the first Hellraiser, and I always seem to forget when I'm watching it. It's like, oh, they're right there at the beginning. But on rewatching it, it was, the fact that you can't even really see what's happening, Joe. You just see the chains grab him in the background, but it doesn't even focus on him. It's just like, because he doesn't matter.
Right.
Because his part, the camera focused on him only up to the point where Voight could get his blood, and then he ceased to matter. Like, Voight doesn't even look at him as he's being like torn into by these chains. It just, the camera doesn't even focus on him. He's done. I just thought that was interesting.
I wrote down predatory nature of wealth. There's I don't want to say there's no better villain, but some of the best villains that you can have are always going to be billionaires, because you're already set up as, you did some shit to get this money. There's no way you could amass this much wealth without doing something to someone. And even if you didn't, if it had been inherited, there's still the aspect of, you don't see what regular people's problems are. And they can be very disposable to you. Whereas this guy is, obviously, it's somebody that no one's going to miss. I mean, that's why he's there. It's not someone who has any connections or has anything that has any power, for that matter. Because he hits me as somebody who's lost in this world. I mean, as far as like the world of wealth and glamour and all the stuff that he's in that party. And somewhat enamored by it, to the point where, Serena introduces herself. He's like, oh, yeah, you want to go meet him? You want to go meet Mr. Voight? You just go down this hallway in 10 minutes. And, I don't know what any of us would do in that situation. I mean, one, I don't ever imagine myself being at a billionaire's party. But if it was, hey, you want to go meet him? I'm like, there's some weird sex shit that's going to go on over here. I've seen Eyes Wide Shut. I know what's going to happen. You're telling me to go to this door and it's going to open for me in 10 minutes. Okay. But yeah, you're right. As far as the just turning away from him and then showing that he doesn't matter, just further demonstrates how Voight is going to use people as a means to an end, to achieve wealth, to achieve power, whatever he's looking for. And we ultimately, spoiler alert, we know that he wants pleasure, because I wrote down, oh, great, another rich guy who wants more power, because when they showed the list of wishes or desires, I'm like, oh, fuck it, he's going to go for power because that's what it's there. That's what he's there for. But then you realize that he searched out pleasure, but he ended up getting pain. And the priest reveals to him, like, your entire pursuit has been pleasure. Like everything you did to get all that wealth, everything you've done on this planet has been to seek pleasure. So have fun with this pain, buddy. Make another choice.
It's really him not reading the fine print. It said sensation. It never said pleasure. Because I think that the thing is, you're dealing with creatures who have a completely different perspective.
Yes.
And that's the same mistake that Frank makes when he seeks pleasure from them in the original movie and the book. The book has this great sentence where it's saying, as Frank is coming back, says Frank hadn't considered the Cenobite's definition of pleasure would differ so wildly from his own. Paraphrasing. And Voight makes the same mistake. He says, like, the Cenobite's tastes were not what he expected. Mm-hmm. And like there's this great line from the hell priest in this movie. It says, "Enough is a myth."
Yes.
And they are in realms where feeling anything is a big deal. Sensation, period. Pleasure and pain are on a spectrum. And when you're so zoomed out from the human experience as to be like, a disciple of the Leviathan or an angel, that spectrum looks like the difference of an inch. And, with a bunch of us, if we were setting like putting a pencil down, and like the difference of an inch is not a big deal. It's a little this way, it's a little this way. It's like, it's close enough, whatever. If you take the entire human range of pain and pleasure and put them on a spectrum and look at it the same as we would look at putting a pencil down, whether it's an inch away from this or that, you can see why to them it's just sensation.
Man, I like that a lot. I loved that they use sensation and how easily we could misinterpret that in any way. But like hearing you break down the spectrum, like I'm sitting here going, I'm a big wimp. Anything that even slightly hurts me is the end of the world. And then, like Don's like, look, my arm fell off and I'm gushing blood, but I'm going to go watch The Office. And I'm like, what the hell, So like hearing you put it in those terms, like I'm just like really sitting here, like thinking about like just like where those definitions are just within my group of friends, let alone everyone in all of time,
Yeah.
That's awesome.
All right. Well, I'm gonna bring the horniness up a little bit. Okay.
Oh boy.
So
like, are you going to refer to it or you're bringing it up?
Both. So I mean, you could say the same thing with this idea of, well, I mean, you see that spectrum brought up a lot as far as people getting what they weren't expecting to get. But as far as what Voight is looking for, someone we're looking for sensation, right? You're so cut off from the world, you want to feel something. And then you also have this aspect of, when we talked about I'm just going to fucking go there. When we talked about the horniness level, right, with these movies, you're looking at these characters. I mean, the general audience, you're looking at these characters one way, right? To where it's like, oh, they're fucking scary, or they're not gory enough, or they're not horny enough, or they're too horny, or anything like that. When you are looking at somebody's perspective of what's going to scare them, what's going to be painful for them, what's going to be pleasurable for them, where I've had these conversations where I happen to watch certain movies, not those kinds of movies, but certain movies, horror movies or action movies or whatever, I'm around my mom and she'll make these comments of like, oh my God, that woman is getting turned on by getting hit, and I'm like, Mom, some people are into that. Some people are into, physical pain as part of the pleasure. And then I'm sitting here with my emphasis on gender and sexuality. and I'm having to explain to my mom sexual preferences with respect to fetishes. So I'm like, Mom, okay, there's some people that like to have a little bit of pain with this, and this. And it went downhill real quickly where, you have those questions that you want to ask your parents when you're, growing up or feel I have a question about sex or whatever. My mom then started asking me all these questions about, well, is this what did they do with this thing? It's like, well, Mom, that is a cat of nine tails, and that is used to actually do this. Oh, this is a flog. This is this. And just explaining how she's like, why would people? I was like, Mom, some people, for various reasons, want to add variety into their experiences, whereas something that you would see as painful, they see it as pleasurable. Whereas they don't feel the same sensation from what would be referred to as vanilla sex. And I'm using that to get to this point about the way in which the priest and other cenobites punish those individuals. Because my question then became like, well, what the fuck did this person do to achieve this, right? Whether we're talking about Nora's character, where it seems like she seems like, not to say that one character is pure and one's not, but she seems as though she has done nothing up to this point to warrant any type of punishment other than being there. Whereas that's not the goal. And correct me if I'm wrong, Hailey. That is not the issue of the Cenobites of making that judgment. Fuck it, you're here. We have a job to do because this is something that brings us pleasure. This is something that we need to do to fulfill, our duties. And they all seem to enjoy the idea of inflicting pain and almost, again, correct me if I'm wrong, almost in a sexual way by inflicting the pain.
Right. No, I agree. I think that they, when they say they're explorers and experience in the realm of sensation and all that stuff, I think they're looking for kindred spirits too. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm glad you brought up Nora for this because I think she has like the best death scene in the movie. Yeah. But they really linger on what's happening with her. But I think part of that also is because she starts saying the Lord's Prayer.
Right.
And that is a completely separate, spiritual distinction from where the Cenobites are. And like that, because they're not hell. It's not, a Christian situation. So they can step in and examine this. Like, I feel like on some level, her perspective was like, she's going to do this, like, you're a devil. I start reciting the Lord's Prayer. I'm good. Or a vampire, or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that's, as with how they approach each other thing, the Hell Priest and the Cenobites come in and just like, this is fascinating. This is interesting. And the Hell Priest, she starts to question Nora, like, what is it you pray for? She asks her twice. Like she wants to understand on some degree, like, where are you coming from with this? And then push those experiences further. Mm-hmm. Like, she talks to her. There is a sexual element to that conversation to me. Obviously, it's not like, going great for Nora. But again, at that point, she's in there's no coming back from there with once stabbed by the box in that degree, which is funny. I'm going to bring up the book again. It's very funny. This doesn't seem to come up in the movies at all. But when Frank first solves the box in the book, they ask him more than once, are you sure? Like, are you sure you want this?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like they're a bit pushier in this movie. They're a bit more, once Riley tries to throw the box away and then after Nora dies, the Cenobites are just like, wait, we want to see you keep going. And for all we know, they did the same to Voight. I don't think Voight needed as much convincing.
Oh, no.
But definitely there's like a note. Once you started this, you have to, you either get to the end of it or we're going to take you instead.
Yeah, because the Hell Priest even makes that comment saying, your blood is on our hands now. and
Yeah.
we can claim you at any time.
Yeah.
And again, I don't mean to step on any of your thunder, James, if you're going to bring this up during addiction, but it almost seems like that's the description that people have gone through addiction talk about. Like, this thing has a hold of them, and when they think they might have kicked it or they might have gotten past it, you have this moment where you return, or at least the addiction grabs you back. Because I have family members who have described it that way, of you can never fucking get rid of it. You just live with struggling to fight against your addiction and fight against the call back to it.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would add to that is, you have days or weeks where you're not actively fighting, but it's always there. Like, I went through a part during the pandemic where I suddenly wanted to drink again when I haven't had a drink in 11 years, and it was more about like the triggers and that kind of thing. And that's a very long conversation, but basically, my point is, the only thing I really have to add to what you just said, even with addiction, is number one, I thought they did an amazing job with addiction in this film. And number two, I love that they made somebody overcoming addiction being the way to also break the control of the cenobites. So I think it's great that you brought it there, but we'll get there.
Well, why not go there now, James?
It's a lot.
Like, you started, I'm like, no, damn it.
Maybe Hailey has more,
Well, because it's also, and it also, I would say that very much touches on the, not the final scene, but the second to final scene after they're getting in the car, when they're getting in the car and stuff. So I don't know if we want to save it for that or
no, we
what.
We can go wherever you want. You're in charge. We're following you.
All right. I guess we'll keep following the plot a little bit. So we cut ahead 6 years. Riley is 6 months sober. They don't really specify exactly if it was multiple things, but she's in group. She's in, and this is not stuff that I know in depth. Her brother Matt is not happy that she's hooking up with a guy from group, and this is that part where it's like people going, it's not horny enough. It's like, well, we're getting a sex scene within the first 10 minutes. That's right. Definitely better off than a lot of horror movies these days. And who else is there? Colin is Matt's boyfriend, and then Nora is their roommate. So we've got our group, and that was another one of those things that changed on rewatch, because when I first watched it, it did feel like it was kind of setting up this slasher type of scenario, and it's technically still sort of doing that, but once you have the understanding of how this whole thing works, it doesn't feel that way anymore. It honestly feels more of a tragedy. There's she and Trevor go to get the puzzle box. She thinks they're getting money. They get the puzzle box. Maybe it'll be worth something. She holds on to it. And what happens? Matt kicks her out, right? Because she was out late and she was drinking, and she was with Trevor. I'm not exactly sure which particular thing he was kicking her out for. I honestly, on some level, I felt like he was power tripping.
Yeah, he was thinking that, like, she was, at least making the assumption that, you're out late, you're doing this. And even Colin's like, no, just fucking stay, like, calm down. Like, this, it's an interesting dynamic that they had as a brother and sister, where, I don't know, he definitely did have a power trip, and he flipped a little bit too easily at that point.
It definitely spoke to me as being a sibling their parents aren't in the picture anymore.
Right.
Like, that's what it felt like. So, and maybe on some level he had to be the parents for her a little bit at some point, and now he can't stop doing that.
For me, it was just I don't know, just speeding the story along. So, like, the things that I wanted more of, I think would have actually slowed it down too much. But I got the feeling it was just like, I don't want to say I feel like, and I haven't rewatched it, so I'm not totally positive. Maybe you'll be able to tell me, but was he using in the past as well? Because he reacted the way somebody who knows they're going to get triggered reacts. And so if she's using and he can't be around it, kicking her out instantly makes sense to me. Like it's not a great answer, but like I understand the motivation at that point. But I don't know if that came up or not.
It didn't come up, but that doesn't mean it wasn't the case.
Yeah. No, I just wasn't sure if it was absolutely there, So, but yeah, outside of that, like I saw it too many times. I worked at a rehab for 4.5 years, and I just constantly saw family kicking people out and then acting like they were the only ones who could save them. So I was just instantly annoyed with him.
Yeah, I thought he and Colin were sweet together, but the moment anytime Riley was around, he became a different person. Even with Colin trying to pull him back, it's like, just let it go. Just let it go. It's like, she's fine. And he just like, no, he had to go in there. He had to start a fight.
I don't know. In some ways it brought it down for me because, when the point becomes trying to get him back, I was like, I don't know. He's kind of a dick. Are you sure you want to do that?
I mean, I understand it. Like I have a bunch of siblings, so I understand. You kind of, you can be incredibly frustrated with them and you still love them and care about them. It's just, I appreciated that the movie didn't try to make it like they were a perfect brother and sister and everything was wonderful. And then the Cenobites took him away.
Been terrible.
So I think that having it be something that she felt like, she felt bad about that. There's a scene when she's at Trevor's place and she's like playing the arcade machine. And she's like, the worst part is he's right. And it's like, I don't know about that either, but it made sense that she would think that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I look at my entire history working there and families and the interactions, and it's so weird because families can be a triggering event and they can be the ones who can help you. And those two are not mutually exclusive at all.
Right.
And I don't know, well,
that's kind of when you say it like that.
Mess, so,
sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, and so when you say like family can be a triggering event, that I think the movie plays into that because Matt is the start of her going down this road with the lament configuration. He does become this driving force behind it. And if you look at the puzzle box, the situation with that as addiction, then it is this new, I wouldn't say she's addicted to it or something, but it just kind of becomes like this subtext, that started with him. And that scene is so cruel because I love the sound design with it because she sees the silhouette, the Cenobites in silhouette kind of. She doesn't really get a clear understanding of them. She's just taken three pills of something that we don't know what it is. So she's not even sure. But, Matt finds her, gets stabbed by the thing, goes into the bathroom to wash it off. She hears him screaming. We don't actually see completely what happens. Like we know what happens because we see the wall open, but we don't see it. We just hear him screaming. And when she runs in there, he's still screaming, but he's not there.
Right.
Like that sound is still coming from inside the bathroom, but there's nobody there. And like that is like all like he's in the walls. And that's just like so perfect, but it's so cruel because it's like he's just an inch away. Not that she could have done anything for him, but she didn't know that.
Yeah. No, I loved that as well. I thought that was one of the creepiest moments of the entire film. Just that idea that the sound, you can still hear it. It's just creepy as hell to me. And then it kind of comes back later when it's Nora, right? That walks behind the walls in the mansion when they get there. So like you kind of get that as well.
That's true.
Screaming through the walls, but in this situation you can do something about it. But I just wanted to add,
limitedly.
Well, yes. But no, I just wanted to add, like you said when she's playing the video game and she's like, well, he's right. I think that that's really important for the character, because if she was just like, no, he's a dick, then she wouldn't have this drive and this guilt and need to get him back, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that that's a really, I'd forgotten about that. And when you said it, it just kind of clicked in me. I was like, oh, wow, that's pretty cool.
All right, James, I texted James before and since we're talking about the box, it's an appropriate time.
I didn't read it. I don't read your messages.
Yes, you do. You do. I texted him and it's like, why does this scene feel like it's a trap? I feel like I don't trust this guy, Colin, at all. I don't trust him. Something is off.
Colin
I'm sorry, Matt, not Colin. But the whole idea, hey, let's go to this. I've watched these deliveries, the kind of stuff that billionaires do. Jeez, I'm getting everybody's name wrong. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's all good. I was just trying to follow it. I was like, what did poor Colin do?
Colin was a sweetheart the entire movie. So.
Yeah.
Even taking care of douchebag Trevor's arm. Anyway.
Get a Justice for Colin shirt. No.
But it's great because there's this moment where Trevor's like, hey, there's this place that I see these deliveries and it's the kind of stuff that billionaires have. And at that moment, if James had come to me and said this, I'm like, that sounds like a trap, dude. This is like when local, sheriff's department or police department decide, hey, we're going to give away a free boat. All you have to do is come here and sign the form. And it happened to be like people with outstanding, speeding tickets. I'm like, I'm not falling for this. But the whole idea of seeing that storage container, and then you open it up as the one safe. Again, James and I are here. I would look at him and say, we're not touching this. We're not going any further, dude. And James would say, well, there's like that. Nope, not going any further. Because everything of this seemed like a trap. And what was great about it was you're seeing how Voight is using Trevor to get another vulnerable person. And he expresses that later in the film, like, oh, she was so easy to get. And, I've done this for you and it shouldn't be a problem. But she started to do this and this. And I love the way it was set up. The only problem I had with Trevor's interaction with Voight was I would have loved the reveal a little bit later, as opposed to Voight sneaking up to him. It's like, oh, did you get them here? Where's the box? And we need to do this because I need to.
Oh, you mean if we found out the same time Riley did?
Yeah, I would have loved it much better that way, as opposed to, ooh, I've got a secret this character doesn't know. Because I had already felt something odd about the house when they went there. I mean, later in the film when they actually go to the mansion. Because it's weird that Trevor doesn't know that much about this eccentric billionaire that apparently lives near where they are. It's not a long trip. But the fact that this house still has all the power and everything's still working. And I'm just thinking well, I know abandoned houses normally don't still have the utilities working.
Right. No, I did wonder about that when she first goes in. It's like, who's paying for this?
Yes, because his lawyer's dead now because, which was a good touch of, we go there, we confront her, talk to her about this, try and get some information, and we end up sticking her with the box by accident. Therefore, she's doomed. She's paying for her sins. But as far as having this long, convoluted trap puzzle, whatever, I thought was a great touch. Because, I mean, you've got all these people that are going to be trapped inside, and eventually the priest, the hell priest, and the cenobites are going to be trapped inside. But I love how all this works together to have a guy who is used to using people end up setting a trap for himself, essentially.
Yeah, that's the funny thing, because later it's exactly that, because Voight when he's confronting the Cenobites in the finale, he says something like this it's not a fortress, it's a cage, and he makes it out to be as if it's for the Cenobites, you've caged yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And then the hell priest says, like, remarkable, all this, all for us. And he says, no, for me. And I'm just like, you don't even realize what you're saying, man. Like, this is all like, you're saying that it's a cage for you. Like, you're ridiculous.
I mean, that's kind of addiction in a nutshell. So it's kind of amazingly made real, you know? He built a literal cage for himself while thinking that he was doing something else.
Yeah.
I could use a cage like this in my house. Like, I could just drop it and people would have to leave me alone. That'd be great.
You mean around you?
Yeah. No cenobites, though. Just sealing myself off from others.
All right, James, I'll send a dog kennel over to you because it works pretty much the same way.
Sweet.
That's the non-billionaire version.
Yeah. Go to Home Depot, get them to send it to you.
I'm definitely never getting to the billionaire version, so that works out well.
So I'm wondering, Trevor can't get into the safe, and it ends up being Riley who figures out how to get into the safe. And my thinking is like, yeah, Voight owned the shipping container or warehouse, whatever, but yeah. I think the Serena owned the safe. I think she set that stuff up, and it was supposed to just be put it in there, forget about it. And Voight is the one who got in contact and was like, I need this. And I'm going to guess his original plan was for Trevor to just essentially sacrifice their meeting, like their group meeting,
right,
one by one to it, or bring them all to the mansion at some point, which is why, when Voight does sneak out when Trevor's injured, he's just like, what the hell are you doing? This is not how this was supposed to go.
I think that's interesting. I hadn't considered that Serena was the one that made it that way. That's kind of great. Does he, again, I only watched it once, so does he like enter a code or anything? Like he should have known how it works or not?
On the outside, but I don't think he was expecting there to be a safe on the inside. And and that makes sense because there's no reason for Voight to have expected it either. Like he probably had a bunch of the codes and stuff, but then Trevor doesn't strike me as a very smart person.
No.
He thinks he is.
Yes.
And he's definitely able to hide things from people, but he can't keep his other shit straight. So he was like, okay, I got the code. I'm going to have Riley. This will be the start of this. And then instead it's like, there's a safe. What's interesting though, like, okay, so it's like he says boxes and boxes, and that's essentially what the puzzle box it is too. But it does, that also to me plays into the addiction element because it's like, just one more. Mm-hmm. It's more of a gambling type of thing, but just kind of falling into that theme.
It's kind of fun that the warehouse is a box, and then the box is a box, and the safe is a box, and there's a box inside with the box inside. That's
the cat wrote fun. This.
This all makes sense now, except the final box would have been empty, so we could climb in and take a nap.
That's why I had to watch it twice because I was like, I'm not going to get everything that I want to. I mean, I'm sure I don't have everything yet either, but I kind of was like, I need to watch it again before we talk about it because otherwise I'm just going to like I just like, I only was going to have the plot. Like, that's just me. My wife is better about that stuff. Like she picks up on so many things the first time. Like I need to watch stuff again to pick up on the extra things.
No, and I think this is one of those movies that like 5 years from now, we're going to be finding stuff and going, oh, wait, like whether it was purposely there or not, you know?
Right. Like that's one of those things. That's why it's like Hellraiser fans, like we finally have something to chew on again. I was saying to Paula Ash, it's just like we've been gnawing on bones for like 30 years.
I like the idea of once Roland Voight is, confronting or being confronted by the Hell Priest and the Cenobites, he's explaining. I mean, he explains previously, I got my request or I got my wish for basically what he assumes is pleasure, but it's sensation. And they put this device on him and it definitely gives him sensation. because it's attached to nerve endings and it said it's enough to where the sensation will never be dulled. It'll always be a fresh pain. And
yeah, because it pauses at random points just to let him get used to it not being there, and then it starts again.
And when he explains to Trevor this whole idea of like, oh, every second is an eternity. When you understand the pain that he's been put through, it makes more sense. And he's been having to deal with this for 6 years.
Yeah.
And then part of me is like, I'm not going to feel bad for the billionaire who used all these people in order to get this shit. And what is it? Caveat tempore. Buyer beware. So the hell priest tells him, like, the gift cannot be ungiven. It can only be exchanged. And you cross a threshold, and then you just cross greater thresholds. And I loved how not only the line, the wording of the line, but the way in which it's delivered, because it's kind of like, you made your bed, dude. Like, this is what you chose. You can get something else, but you can't give anything back. And that's that realization that he has at that moment of like, I'm fucked. I should have never opened the box. I should have never come up with this elaborate plan. I should have just left things alone, as much as I was in love with the occult and all this other stuff, which I have to admit, the more money people have, the weirder their hobbies get. The weirder their hobbies get, because I'm telling you right now, if I had a couple $1 million, I'm going to like just build a Mario Kart, track in a neighborhood and let kids ride the go-karts for free. But that's just me. I'm not going to be looking to summon demons and all types of things. But anyway, I love the idea that, one, it's open to interpretation as far as whether or not the gift can be exchanged for another gift. Another gift out of those 6, or you can exchange the person that the gift that's going to be the recipient of the gift, which would have been an interesting thing to go with. But seeing who Voight is, I don't think he's looking at it that way. I think he's looking at it as, I can only exchange a gift for me, as opposed to I can put this on someone else. In the same way you could put the bloodletting of or the blood sacrifice onto someone else, because you didn't need to. Even if you cut yourself, you could bring somebody else in as your sacrifice, as a hell priest acknowledges and informs Riley about.
Right. I mean, it's a risk because you're putting your blood in their hands, but they like their games, they like their deals. Like, you can work with them.
Gosh, this would be a great negotiation. I would love for certain individuals, since we're talking about billionaires, I would love to see how certain billionaires would handle this. Just because they wouldn't pay attention to the fine print of this deal, as this one didn't.
And they always want more.
Yes.
What about people who aren't exactly billionaires but claim to be, and are former presidents of the United States? Would you like to see that or not?
Due to the fact that I'm probably already on a couple of watch lists and I've heard a phone click, I'm not going to answer that question.
I couldn't resist.
I don't think that individual is capable of solving even the easy version of the puzzle box in this movie.
It would be covered with ketchup. That's what would happen.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I mean, because the puzzle box in this movie wants to be solved. Like, it is practically doing it on its own. It just needs somebody to just touch it, and it's right. In the other stuff, it's like, no, this is complicated. Like, in the book, it's this music tone thing, and you've got to do all this complicated stuff, and like, it takes Frank months to figure it out. In the original movie, it's still very complicated bit of switching around. Here, it's just like, it's pretty much set already. We're just waiting. We're just waiting for you.
And I love that after watching it. But no,
I think the Leviathan wants to be fed.
Yes.
And but like, in the moment when I was first watching it, I was like, what why'd you let this random dude solve it? Like, how'd you know he would be able to solve it? And then, as I kept watching, I was like, oh, I see. Never mind. The first one, I was like, that's very strange. Why is this guy brought in to solve it?
That's such a great line, though. Is like, if I solve it, do I get a prize? And Boyd's like, I do.
Yes.
Like, it was such great delivery.
And at that moment, you should have, no matter how enamored you are with that person, that is a line that I do not want to hear somebody say at that moment of like, I'm in this weird, creepy room with all these other things, all these other artifacts. And if I solve it, you get a prize. No. No.
It could work. I don't know. Maybe when you hang out with billionaires, that just happens.
I think that's part of the problem. Like, I forget where I saw this, but there's a sex worker saying she'd never been more scared than she was when she was alone in an elevator with a billionaire.
Mm.
Wow.
It's like because the thing is, you don't need, if you're a billionaire, you don't need magic puzzle box to make people disappear.
Right.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
You just need good PR and a team of attorneys. And not even that. That's more if you get caught.
Not even that because somebody has to even be like, why? Because most people would just be like, why would a billionaire do that? They have all this money. They don't need to do that. And it's like, because you would think that way.
I think that the strongest thing thank you, James. I was going to say the strongest thing I'd ever heard about why somebody did something was because they could.
Yeah.
And that's the only rational argument they have for doing what it is. It's because I can, not because I wanted to, not because you did anything to me. It's the fact that I could. And it's that person is 100% correct, because I'll be honest, I don't trust anybody who's amassed that amount of wealth. Because again, as I started the show, you or someone in your family had to have done some outlandish shit to get that money and then to hold on to that money. And you will continue doing some things that are ridiculous.
And it's the holding on. Harmful. Like, even if you happen to make that money in a way that did not hurt anyone, the holding on to it is the next side of the river. Like, people have said Dolly Parton would be a billionaire if she didn't give so much money away. Mm-hmm. But she does. She constantly does.
Yeah,
and she's constantly investing in things.
Doing just fine.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, she's not trying to go into space, James.
Or summon demons.
Yes. Maybe that's why Musk and Bezos were doing, as well as Richard Branson. Maybe they were trying to meet the I guess the ship or the vessel that the god was stationing itself in.
Well, I would also just say
yes.
Oh, I think that is the god. I don't think there's something inside there.
Okay,
I think that is it. Like, that's at least that's how it seemed to be from Hellraiser 2, and I kind of just kept it along with that. But maybe there is more to it. Who knows? My mortal simplicity. It's like, big shape must be God.
That's right.
Well, I mean, if we learned anything from everything everywhere all at once, I mean, rocks can be sentient as well. So.
Wow.
All right. Here's the question I have for either one of you. Given the choices.
Oh God.
Because Riley chooses to. She honestly says, like, I don't want anything. I don't. And the hell priest basically states, like, well, then everyone you've lost, almost like guilting you into, please make a choice. That game. Like, well, then everything you've done has been pointless. Everyone that you've lost, wouldn't you like to have your brother back? And it makes that statement earlier about his death being exquisite, which is a very interesting way to describe someone's death. I mean, just the idea that they drew pleasure from it. She chooses nothing.
Sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to say she chooses nothing. And by choosing nothing, she makes a choice, which I thought was a remarkable way to take the film, as opposed to walking away and having nothing to do with it. You're still bound to this. And it simply states, then your choice is lament. You got to live with this, which again was a great touch, because of the character that this is and what she's had to deal with her life, and what she's going to have to deal with going forward. And beyond that, how she's going to handle that guilt going forward. So my question is, given that, what choice would any of you make? I mean, assuming you read the fine print.
Right. I mean, the lament is definitely the safe one, I suppose. I mean, it's interesting. I love how the gasp starts to say, "You have chosen," and then the hell priest cuts in, "a life of regret."
Mm-hmm.
And you can see that in Riley's face, in her eyes, when she gets into the car. She's not sure if she should maybe have chosen resurrection after all. And she never will be. She'll always wonder.
I mean, it seems like everything comes with a price, so she probably made the right choice.
She probably did, but...
Well, I think even with the resurrection, right, is your brother going to come back in the same form? Because I remember, and both of you probably did this as well, but the monkey paw story about how this, every time you made a wish, like it wasn't what you expected. There was some type of curse to go along with it. And one of the versions I heard was involved, the son died in a gruesome car accident, and the parent had the monkey paw and decided, I wish my son, I want you to bring my son back. And the son, and they hear a knock at the door, and it's their dead son, still basically a zombie at this point, because they never specified, hey, this is the way it is.
Or there's versions where it's like the person's in their casket. It's not like you didn't wish them to be magic to the front door. Yeah, I mean, who knows? Or my thinking would be he'd kind of just be, he'd be kind of having like a wind up existence, kind of like the device that was attached to Voight, that would just kind of be keeping him motorized, but not really himself. Because that's the thing. We don't know if the people continue to exist in the cenobite world once they've been taken, like within the labyrinth. In the old continuity, that was the case. Like Frank was persisting within this other realm until the blood brings him back over to this side. But we don't know in here. They keep it ambiguous. They clearly, more time passes over there because they tell Nora, like, you will experience everything by the time we're done with you. So the immediate ripping in half of her can't be the end of it then. Yeah. So we just don't know. As far as which one I would choose, again, lament would be the safe one, but without going into it without knowing, I would probably choose knowledge and then hate myself for it, because we don't know what that does. I'm imagining just an overwhelming knowledge
of everything.
Yeah. Of everything. Or they could just screw a book to your arm. You never know.
You have a dictionary on one side and the Bible on the other. Good luck.
Oh God. It's a beautiful book in the movie, though.
Yeah.
I love the image that says "audience with God." That's such a great picture. How about you, James?
I don't know what I would pick. I assume that I would have a heart attack and die as soon as I saw them. So, but they can probably stop that. So who knows?
You've never.
I feel like I was leaning towards the lament configuration, and then like you said, you wouldn't know. So it's not like I have this knowledge going in. So off the list, if I was her, I would go with resurrection because that's what I've been trying to do. But as myself, I would probably choose either knowledge or love, and I'm sure those both end terribly. So yeah, I don't know.
Or persist terribly.
Exactly. I will add that your thing you just said about Matt rising from the dead and having like weird things control him, I kind of wish that was the end of the movie now, but because that would have been crazy.
But we just don't know. Like, there's so much we don't know about this, about the lore of this. It gives us so much lore than we've had, and yet it still keeps so much from us.
Oh yeah. And that's kind of great because that's the point of the Cenobites to begin with. Like, it's all this stuff we don't know and we can't understand. And so it's kind of cool how it really works to cement that as well. Like, we got all this new stuff and all it gave us was more questions.
Oh, hey, yeah, Don, you got to tell us.
Oh, damn it.
I've just gotten used to him refusing to answer his own questions, so I don't even care.
Yeah, I was like, the streak is alive. I don't know. It would be between lore or knowledge and lament. Because I mean, even though resurrection itself, the Lazarus, it's not something that happens to you. I don't know if knowing that the person is gone, I can accept that. But knowing what I know and having read the things that I've read, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, I don't know how comfortable I would be in resurrecting someone, because there are going to be two problems I run into. You're dead. What did you see? And then the answer would be like, nothing. There's nothing beyond this. And be like, well, fuck. And then two, they may come back in a worse condition. And I explained this to James before. So my grandmother passed recently, and I explained to him, we reached out to me. I said, well, I basically had already said goodbye to her. And what I meant was the person that she was within the last couple of years was not the person I knew. And I mean that as far as like with her failing health, with dementia, with all that stuff. So it wasn't a thing of it didn't impact me. It was an issue of, I want to remember her as the grandmother who used to curse people out. Like the grandmother who would tell us, like, you know, who would not snitch on us with our grandfather. Like if some shit had gone down in the house, because I would go to Virginia every summer. If something had gone down in the house, like she just basically kept her mouth shut. If we were watching movies we weren't supposed to be because he was really religious, she was pretty much the one who was renting them and putting them on TV. So, you know, that's what I remember, as opposed to if this were the same situation that Riley runs into with her brother, I'd be wary of doing it, because knowing what I know now, I would be very fearful and very anxious about what his resurrection would look like. And beyond that, what if they fucking make me sit there and watch, you know, his dead body undecompose and come back? Or what if it comes back with some type of mechanism? So for me, it would be an issue of like, I've already accepted that he's gone. I know you have the power to bring him back, but I've seen what you've done to this guy. So I'm not touching that. I'm not even gonna go there. Even if it happened to be, and I don't know, I might have fun with who I resurrect though, if it's not a loved one. So maybe we just bring back Ronald Reagan to punch the shit out of him.
I knew you were going to pick Reagan.
For all the stuff that he did. God, could you imagine? I'd become a billionaire overnight. I'm like, come punch the resurrected Ronald Reagan in the face. The guy who ignored the AIDS crisis until it was convenient for him to talk about, or I'm sorry, until he was forced to talk about. The guy who crashed the middle class and destroyed labor. Come here, come one, come all. You know what? I would be able to take care of the national debt. I'd be able to put so many kids through school. Oh my gosh. Could you imagine? And then I'd be able to get away with it legally, because that is not Ronald Reagan, the living embodiment. That is the resurrected Ronald Reagan. I could trademark it, patent it. I have full control over it. Boom, done. There's my answer.
Well, what if you used it to raise John F. Kennedy on a day that the MAGAs claim he's coming back?
Oh,
just
my
to see
God.
what they do.
That would be, but it's John F. Kennedy Jr. though. I would have so much fun.
That's what I meant.
Sorry. Holy shit. I think we found a new way to get around this. Where's that damn Leviathan? I need to.
And he'd be like, "There's no afterlife. Religion doesn't matter. Just see what they do. Just see. It's just chaos."
Look, I go even further. I would get probably one of their. I get one of the founding fathers, like Thomas Jefferson, and I'm like, "Hey, these guys keep quoting you all the time. What did you really say? Why are you talking to me? And why are you free?" And I'd be like, "All right, that's enough, Mr. Jefferson."
Wow.
Oh my God.
It's got strange really fast.
Yes, Thomas Jefferson, one of the worst human beings ever to exist on this planet. He and Christopher Columbus and Hitler and all
Ronald Reagan.
And Ronald Reagan.
It sounds like you would need a bunch of these. Like you'd have to keep going back.
Oh.
It's like, okay, Leviathan, I'm ready for another one.
I would keep going. They'd be like, we can't keep up with you. You are giving us so many pleasures that we cannot keep up. You are our greatest ally.
Oh
In fact, you are the darkest son of a bitch we've ever met. Who hurt you?
I want to make a parody movie now where they give you the choice and then you just spend so much time overthinking it that they give up and leave.
I don't think that would happen. They don't seem like they're in too much of a hurry.
That's true.
They'd just be around you constantly. Like it was, yeah.
It'd be like, this is the third time we've seen this season of The Office. What is happening?
Third? Shit, they haven't been with me that long then. Or they've been with me for a week.
Jeez.
Well, the first time watching it, I was kind of waiting for this because I'd recently watched Hellraiser 2, and the doctor in that movie becoming a cenobite is kind of one of the big turns late in the movie. So I was kind of waiting for this to possibly happen, and the second viewing, I was able to appreciate it more as its own thing because Riley and Colin drive off. She's going to carry this for the rest of her life. And we see kind of like this rain of white sparks, and like you see Voight, but he's been like weathered and he's hairless and he's aged considerably. And you hear the Hell Priest's voice saying like, Roland, it's time. And it makes you wonder how long he's been rushing through this expanse of just kind of nothingness, on this slab within the Leviathan. He's been swept clean by the heavens, and he's seeing this other aspect of the realm of the Cenobites and such. And I don't know what his Cenobite name would be. I feel like he'd be the smile because it strips his palms into kind of a curve of a smile. It does the same to his torso, and then it does it to his face as well. But it's the interesting thing to me beyond that is his eyes. Because we're seeing what he sees at a certain point after he stops like looking down at what has become of his body. And we start seeing kind of like, I didn't notice this the first time, but there's kind of this like prism shape moving in the white. And I'm wondering if that's like kind of how like the spectrum I was talking about, if he's seeing how small reality is, like this different shape of everything, up to the point where then he becomes the Leviathan's angel. And like when he zooms out and he's the silhouette, like it does look like an angel. So it's just really interesting transformation because in Hellraiser 2, the doctor in that goes into a box and then he comes out and he's a Cenobite. Here we actually see some of what happens.
It would be interesting to see, hopefully this gets enough attention with Hulu and Disney, which I'm going to avoid is the Hell Priest a Disney princess question, because it's out there. I mean, if the Xenomorph Queen can be a Disney princess or Disney Queen, why not the Hell Priest? But I think that's a good way to tease where this could go in the future, but it's also a good way to just kind of leave it. So
yeah,
we don't know what's going to happen. And we don't need to know in order to have some type of resolution with this film. And I think it was a good touch to show us what happens to him now, since, you know, he gets his comeuppance twice, which is great.
I feel like after the point, he wouldn't even know it anymore. His because that's, again, it's the time and perspective. Like, I don't even know if he'd be the same person. He wouldn't be the same person anymore. Were like somebody else to pick up the box, and he was one of the cenobites, you know, that appears to them. I wonder if you're not Riley necessarily, but if you're somebody who picks up the lament configuration of this movie and you stab yourself, I do wonder if the cenobites immediately would just take you, or if that is when, like, because it seems to me what might have happened with Voight is that he solved it like Frank did, and he got stabbed with it, but then the cenobites, you know, present the option, you can proceed.
When you put it that way, I'd kind of like to see that movie like a prequel now, like how he got to that point. But I don't know. I also,
I mean, you could do it with anyone, really.
Sure, but I don't know. I like you know, because he has all the books with like all the research and stuff. I would just kind of like to see his story, but that's me.
No, it wouldn't be his story. It will be Nicolas Cage going around the world finding those documents. He has been hired by Voight to do it.
I'm not sure Voight actually did any of that work. Like Serena says at the beginning, he doesn't do anything he can pay someone else to do.
Right.
Oh, that's a good point.
So I think a Voight movie would just be him sitting on his ass as somebody else brings him the books and brings him the research and brings him the lament configuration.
Well, I would watch it. No, I'm just kidding. I'd watch somebody gathering all that for
I'm not trying to put down the suggestion of a prequel. I guess I feel like billionaires don't make that great of protagonists.
Oh yeah, no. I think it's a great point. And it would actually be more fun because you could tell the story and not know that's where it's going.
That's true. You could make it so you didn't even know it was a prequel until the end. Just aesthetics wise, I really love the costume design, the Cenobite designs. The cinematography was gorgeous. I expected that after the Night House, but just this lovely like way of approaching like blues and reds, and then this is me just being a Hellraiser fan, but just the music was just made me so happy because it was taking the Christopher Young themes from the first two movies and just doing new things with them. It was doing like subtle versions of tunes. It was working with the kind of music box form differently, like when Riley is in the playground. And it stays subtle for most of the movie and then builds and builds until it's finally reached this loud crescendo of like grandeur when the Leviathan is descending. It's just as someone like the score to the original Hellraiser is one of my favorite movie scores ever. Like I think it's the only movie score where I actually bought the remaster later after buying the original. But it's just music that I just think is so beautiful and different and makes it feel like something like there's a construct at play here, which makes sense because of what the movie's about. It's about this puzzle box. But this just Ben Lovett's score just worked off those Christopher Young themes so beautifully. I'm going to stop because I could just talk about the music of these movies for so long because I love the music of these movies so much.
I thought it was really cool how they incorporated the original and then tweaked it and made it its own. And I don't know, like I love how that works with, I guess it's a reboot or I don't know, however you want to look at it. Like I thought it just works really well with that whole, it fits in and then it's its own thing. And like, it's just a cool symbolism of that as well. The only other thing I really wanted to add, I absolutely loved the van scene when the van stretches out and oh man, that was like my favorite part of the whole thing. I was like, oh shit, look at this. Like, I got very used to the walls moving and everything, but to see it done there, I was just like, that's beautiful. And then how she starts sinking, and yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
So
it's so
doesn't really
cool
fit in
because
anywhere else, so I had to throw it here.
it's one of those things where it's like you would ask, like, okay, they open the walls. What if you just keep driving? And it's like, well, now the movie answered that.
You can never get away. Too bad.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Well, awesome. All right. So I guess that brings us to movie recs. So if people liked this, what else should they watch? And Hailey, you're the guest, so you get to go first.
I guess Hellraiser 1987. But I would also recommend like watching the Ritual and the Night House. I do think that there is kind of a people are calling this David Bruckner's grief trilogy, and I think that's appropriate. I think all three of the movies are. This is the end point to me of like two different worthwhile trilogies. Its continuity is completely separate from the first two Hellraiser movies, but these are now the three good Hellraiser movies. But then it can be this grief trilogy people are talking about from David Bruckner with The Ritual, The Night House, and now Hellraiser 2022.
Very cool. I always do a double feature, and I was going to pick The Night House, so we'll just keep rolling with that. Very similar reasons. I haven't seen The Ritual, so I can't talk about the trilogy as a whole, but these two movies together definitely work well together, so that's my double feature. Don, do you have 666 movies for us today?
Well, yes. Anyway. I was going to say, because I was going to do the whole thing about like, oh my gosh, you haven't seen The Ritual. But when I do it, it's more a thing of I can't wait to hear what you have to say about it, because it's a really interesting film. I enjoyed it when I watched it a few years ago, or time is weird now. I might have watched it last week, but I hope you like it when you do get around to watching it. It's a very good movie. It's probably still on Netflix. But my movies for this, I've got Evil Dead, Parasite, Prey. I'm surprised no one said The Cell. Nightmare on Elm Street, the original or even the reboot. Saw, 13 Ghosts, In the Mouth of Madness, Omen, Dawn of the Dead, It, Event Horizon, Nightbreed, The Purge, Train to Busan, Don't Breathe, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, Would You Rather, House of Wax, and last but not least, James's favorite movie of all time, Wish Upon. Speak about, you're getting something you didn't plan on
it as a movie.
Yes.
No, I don't hate it that much. I just had to oversell there. Yeah, I don't know. You threw in so many that, like, as you were going, I was like, oh, that'd be good with this. That'd be good with this. And then it just like all went away, and I don't remember any of it. So
that's okay. Later. I'll send you the list.
Sweet. Just delete Wish Upon. Anyway, so all right, Hailey, I guess that brings it back to you. You want to tell everybody where they can find you on social and buy your books and whatever else?
Sure. You can find I'm on my website at www.haileypiper.com. And on Twitter, I'm at Hailey Piper Says. And on Instagram, I'm at Hailey Piper Fights. And you can buy my books from pretty much anywhere you can buy books. Indie stores, bookshop.org, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all those places.
Butcher Cabin Books. Yeah,
Yes. I said indie bookstores.
I know. No, I had to throw out. Jenny's a good friend.
I'm so happy.
I have to just keep pushing Butcher Cabin.
She's wonderful. It's just really cool to see it take off like that.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I guess that wraps it up for another week. So as always, I am James Sabata.
And I'm Don Guillory.
And fuck Ronald Reagan. I will not. All right. And we'll see you next week here at thenecronoma.com.